Um, yeah, good to thanks for coming along. I'm sure you're in the depths of CFA wisdom and madness at the moment. I'm Thomas, as I'm sure the name might be lighting up on your screen. So I'll introduce myself and then introduce Mitch, or get Mitch to introduce himself. I did CFA level 2 in May of this year. Passed, big relief. Got up at 1 a.m, checked the phone, just had to be sure that it was had happened. And as of like last week, have started to think about when I'm going to do level 3. I feel like I'm this far in now. I've done 2 levels. Surely the third one can't be that difficult. Mitchell, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, of course. Hey everyone, my name is Mitchell Hurring. I'm currently working at the Financial Markets Authority, and much like Thomas, I sat in May and passed that as well. I didn't really get much sleep the night before the results came out, so it was a bit of a rough morning for me, but thankfully got that pass. So I was really stoked about that. And I'm probably going to make a run for level 3 in August next year, I'd say. So gonna start studying very slowly, and really kick into it full gear early next year, I'd say.
Yeah, nice. I could definitely relate about that. Yeah, pretty
Mm.
broken sleep pattern the night before. I'll just get everyone else to maybe introduce themselves. And I'm just gonna do, yeah, guys, if you just want to, say hello, say, where you're at, when you might be sitting your exam. Nicole, you're just first on the list. So kia ora, welcome. Oh, just me? All right, I can't hear you. Sorry, Nicole. Not sure what's going on there. Do you want to maybe have another stab? Oh, no, jumped off entirely. Hopefully next person's not that scared of introducing themselves. James, how's it going?
Yeah, I'm going good, thanks. Going good.
Yeah, what's the situation with level 2 at the moment? Are you right in the thick of it, thinking about starting?
Looking to start. So interesting to kind of hear what it's been like. I guess the study requirements and how it is kind of managing that level 2 study alongside working as well.
Yeah. Are you working in a sort of financy field at the moment? Something
I
that
have
you're
been
kind of
taking a bit of a break at the moment, which will give me bandwidth to be able to focus on this, which will be quite nice. So I
yeah,
was in
sweet as.
investment advisory type space.
Cool. Yeah, thanks for coming along, James. William, guess you're next. How's it going?
G'day, guys. Yeah, good. Sorry, I got the camera off. I'm just making dinner at the moment, but I'll just tune in. Um, I work at Fonterra, big milk company. They've got a venture capital team, so analysts in there sort of trying to figure out how to value companies that haven't got any assets. Plan to do level 2 in May, so have a decent chunk of time. But sort of, I think the main thing on top of my mind is I wasn't the most efficient at level 1. I probably did, like you say, have to go over the content probably twice before I even started sinking in, and then just crammed questions. But yeah, keen to get your guys' thoughts on what worked for you, and then for level 2 specifically, what worked or what didn't work to level 1.
Sweet. Yeah, thanks for joining in. Yeah, don't feel obliged to get the camera on or anything. Yeah, enjoy the dinner.
Yeah. It's Nicole. Sorry about that just now. I had my computer settings on mute, so I had to change it. It took me a while.
All good. Hey, welcome along. You doing level 2 at the moment?
Yep. So I'm working towards level 2 and doing a master's program at the same time. So just doing a bit of study at the moment.
Cool, pretty full on. When do you think you might sit CFA level 2, or have you enrolled to sit CFA level 2?
Yeah, I've enrolled for the end of the year. It's actually my second attempt, so I'll kind of have to see how it goes. Yeah.
Cool. I'm really keen if you're keen to share some of your thoughts throughout this as well. Yeah, kind of what potentially didn't go right, what you kind of might do differently this time. And that goes for everyone, just, actually part of the really useful thing of doing these is sharing your experience with each other. and asking questions, because you do learn quite a bit from what other people are thinking about or other people are worried about. Yeah, I definitely know it's been helpful for me as well.
Yeah.
Sweet. And Zach, do you want to jump on? Welcome along.
Yeah, thank you. So I set level 1 in May. I've just enrolled for level 2 in May next year. So just hoping to get a bit of insight into how level 2 study maybe differs from level 1 and what you guys noticed worked better the second time round than compared to level 1, that is.
Sweet. And are you, Zach, are you in a sort of financing gig at the moment?
Yeah, so I'm currently in the research team at Forsyth Bar. So pretty relatable, kind of transferable skills, which is good.
Yeah, I'm sure. Do you find, or did you find with level 1 that doing a finance related job was quite helpful or slightly overwhelming, or what was the kind of experience for you?
It was obviously helpful in a lot of ways, particularly with I had a lot of resources and people available to me, which helped quite a lot. Most of the team have sat or we're currently sitting CFA at the same time, so it was so that was definitely useful. Yeah, in terms of like time constraints, it was a little bit difficult at times, but people are pretty good in understanding when you're getting close to exam time. So
Yep, and there's something quite useful about having, I guess, other people in the trenches with you,
definitely
having their experience. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. And Tam, I think you're lucky last. How's it going?
Hello. So it's Tam. I'm currently working at Fisher Fund in the operation team, and I passed my level 1, I think March this year, and I'm also gonna sit level 2 May next year. But unlike everyone else, I'm already in panic mode because I feel like it's already so close. I spent 9 months studying level 1, and I'm still in huge rush in the last 3 months. So I'm actually quite worried this time. Especially for the level 1 curriculum, because I did study finance in uni. So the level 1, I think half of it was just relearning what I already learned, but level 2, I expect it to be brand new. So I'm really nervous, in panic mode. So hopefully we'll get some answer from you guys. Thank you.
I can definitely relate to I spent 9 months and the last 3 months were panic mode. For both levels. Mitch, I'm not sure what your experience was like. Would you probably relate to that?
Yeah, I'd say so. I actually really unfortunately fell ill in the last 3 weeks before the exam. So I had a week of sick leave taken, and I got very little study done in that time. So that sort of added to the stress. But yeah, that last sort of month or two is really high stress. Definitely can agree.
Yeah, for sure.
Mm.
And like you've been in and around finance for a wee while now, right? So are you using quite a bit of your level 2 stuff? Was some of it kind of stuff you went, I'm now learning it in like a formal setting?
I guess for me at the FMA, maybe it's helpful to do a little bit of an introduction to the role itself, and sort of how that connects to the CFA program. So I'd probably have to say it's quite different to a traditional quantitative finance or research finance. We don't look at numbers. We don't use spreadsheets. We're not valuing any assets. We're more on the financial market participant conduct side. So I'm in the financial advice team. And we effectively license and once licensed, oversee financial advice providers in New Zealand. So think your investment advisors, your KiwiSaver, your insurance, as well as your mortgages and everything like that. So the role really involves sort of like intensive oversight of these licensed entities. So one of our key roles is monitoring. So we walk into the business, we sit down for sort of 2, 3, 4 days, and we learn everything about the business that we can. We speak to directors, we speak to the board, we speak to senior management, we speak to advisors on the ground as well, and we really learn about that firm and their compliance approach and how they do business. How they're ensuring the quality of their services. So it is really different to CFA. As I say, the key thing there is we're not valuing anything. But there are definitely connections to be made. For example, when we go and see asset management firms, we'll be assessing suitability, and therefore we'll be assessing how they've priced their assets, how they've researched their investment advice, and how they've provided that as well, how they've dealt with the client. So think about all the asset management stuff and portfolio management stuff from level 1, also from level 2, as everyone will see. Really, can sort of draw parallels with that part of the work. And also, I guess really the biggest one is ethics as well. So being a sort of quasi-legal role, we do apply a lot of the legislation on a daily basis. And we sort of need to determine, has someone breached a code of ethics, because we do have a financial advice code, and we need to determine how is their conduct been in line with their ethical obligations. So I found that ethics really helped me, but yeah, definitely like learning the content has for sure just got me closer to the whole finance sector, and really spread me across a broad level of knowledge, and got me up to speed with how entities do this in the workplace. And now I'm effectively supervising, to an extent, some of this work. So it's definitely really helpful to learn everything that's in the curriculum.
And yeah, I kind of guess, like, from your point of view, learning the CFA content is kind of putting yourself probably a bit more into that sort of private company mindset. Like, you probably have a bit more empathy, if you will, of what an asset manager's job looks like, what they're thinking about, what risks they're facing, all of that sort of stuff.
Absolutely, yeah, really helpful for that. Hey, I mean, not everyone on the team is from a finance background. We've got some. I say insurance, not from a finance background. I should say investment management background. So not everyone's familiar with the process of sort of working with a client and asset allocation, security selection, all that kind of stuff. So it's really helpful to see that, yeah, and I can definitely apply a lot of what's in the curriculum to sort of set expectations for the team as well. And maybe the team will have ideals of what they want to see, but that in practice it doesn't quite work like that. And that's brought forward by some of the knowledge from the course, as well as just seeing how other businesses do it as well.
So how long have you been with FMA? Is this become quite a good gig for you? Is this, something you're going to stick with?
Yeah, it could be. Yeah, it could be. So I've been there 18 months now, or just over 18 months. And the reason I wanted to sign up with them was I did commercial law and finance at uni. And, there's not a whole lot of places that you can apply a commercial law major through commerce. Obviously you can go the legal route and go work for a law firm. You have to have a Bachelor of Laws for that usually. And so I thought, what better intersection of the two disciplines than the regulator that applies the legislation to finance. So I really wanted to give it a crack because of that background, and it's worked out fantastically. So at the moment, I'm certainly not looking to leave. Really enjoying all the learning that I'm getting, and I think, as I say, speaking to the boards, speaking to senior management, definitely getting some fantastic exposure to people with a whole lot of experience to share as well, which is just brilliant.
Yeah, for sure. Like, I can just relate on having been at Reserve Bank before I did this current job, and the supervisors there, they're going, and their conversation level is with CEO, chair, board level. Being a regulator on that side of the fence, and New Zealand's quite a small place, so the regulatory teams are not actually even that big. And a lot of it is relationship management, like you say, and then underlying all of that is kind of a really good sort of quantitative financing background to it. Yeah, really interesting stuff. I might just intro myself as well, just talk really briefly about what I do, because mine is very unrelated to FMA, although I did, was at Reserve Bank before this. Yeah, doing a bit of commodity trading at Contact Energy, kind of second largest electricity producer in New Zealand, natural gas market and wholesale electricity market. I did CFA because I didn't do a master's, and kind of felt like I should do something that got me a bit more ticket than my little BSI. And so I was like, well, CFA feels really well respected, and probably maybe this is just because I have a thing against accountants, but maybe a little bit better than a CA or a CPA. And I don't know what makes me say that. I just think a lot of the people in my organization that I look up to, or have a really, what I would consider a really strong skill set, quantitatively and doing a lot of analysis of stuff, they have done CFA or they've been kind of across that sort of thing. And kind of like you, I don't value assets with a formula at all. There is the slimmest commodity trading section in alternative investments talking about backwardation and contango, and I have never used the words backwardation or contango around here. We talk about whether the curve is up, down, or flat, and like that is about it. And there is a lot less valuation than I think people might give credit for in a sort of trading environment. Yeah, but it's certainly been an interesting ride, and certainly like quite enjoyed it for sure. I think we'll just jump into, maybe let's have a bit of a yarn about like CFA level 2 as kind of how you got into studying it, what your approach was, all of that sort of stuff. You said you did it in May. When did you sort of pick up the books for the first time? Did you have a bit of a break after level 1?
So I passed. I set the level 1 exam last May, May 2022. And that went well. So I thought, let's jump. I could have jumped on I think it was November, but I thought that was a little bit too slim of a timeline for me. So I thought let's make a run for May, and I probably started studying maybe around this time last year, I'd say. So I got a really good few months of study in before the May 2023 exam. I definitely prioritize spending sort of at least an hour and a half to sort of 2, maybe 3 on a good day, really. After work, studying, making sure I was, getting really familiar with the content that's in there, making sure I wasn't sort of, given the difference between the role and the content, given I wasn't sort of forgetting that side of finance, because it's very easy when you're not focusing on, something for a very long time, very easy to just completely forget everything. And I know since passing the level 2 exam, there's a couple of things that just slip your mind, right? And I'm sure I could pick them up in the next few days if I reviewed the content. But when you're not using it daily or even weekly, you really just forget it. So I wanted to make sure that I wasn't doing that, wasn't forgetting everything as soon as I touched it and moved on. So really sort of trickled in a lot of time here and there for a longer period of time. I found that worked really well. So I started with doing a full pass of the curriculum. So not really learning anything, just sort of getting acquainted with the text, seeing what was on each page, the kind of broad topic areas. I know the topics are the same. So you got your quant, you got your economics, you got your fixed income, equity, all that kind of stuff. It's all the same. Just new stuff within it. So I was just making sure that there wasn't going to be anything that I'm going to have to shell like a whole month into learning, right? Like some of the fixed income topics or some of the derivative stuff. And just really got really familiar with the text. And then I did a second pass through where I sort of spent more time on the areas that I knew I'd struggle with a little bit more. And then I sort of finally did that one last third pass through to really learn the stuff within that last sort of 4-month time frame. Which was at the start of this year, so after New Year's.
So did you probably have like 2 or 3 looks at the content before you got into that final revision phase? Like, had you actually, you sound like you passed through it all and then you kind of went through it again. Was that probably 2 or 3 looks before review?
2, it was from memory. Yeah. And I just found, as I say, it really shows you everything, so you know where everything is. And if you wake up one morning and you can't remember a formula, you know exactly where to go, or you know exactly what topic you need to review, and you know exactly what topic you're reviewing next week because you know where everything is in sequence, and you sort of know the topic areas and the subtopics within those and what's in the curriculum. So I found that really useful.
Did you get a copy of the book? Were you said you kind of looked through the pages and stuff. Was that actually the CFA?
No, not the physical
handbook
ones.
or anything?
No, not the physical ones. I don't know how much they are, but I didn't do that for level 1, didn't do it for level 2, and it worked for level 1. So I thought, stick with the PDFs again. I did actually invest section by topic by topic in Mark Meldrum's content. and I didn't really intend on buying the full thing, but sort of by those last 3 months, I was like, maybe I'm just going to have to bite the bullet and get the whole course. So started off with the economics one, because economics is certainly a weak area of mine. Skipped on to fixed income after that, and great content from him. Just kept going topic by topic, buying the sections.
That's a bit of a contrast. So I did Mark Meldrum for level 1. I probably make a shameless plug for him because I did it again at level 2. I actually never picked up a CFA PDF or textbook or anything. I just did the Mark Meldrum stuff. And I basically spent, my study routine was write out the notes of Mark Meldrum's chalkboard. And yes, you can print off a PDF version of the notes, but I found for me, like sitting and writing a piece of information, like just creates a bit of a connection in my brain for where something is. That kind of, in my mind, that's what active learning is like that first pass through was writing notes, so that when I got to that revision point, it was kind of in my head, and I had this sort of Mark-esque person in the back of my brain, saying it in the way that Mark Meldrum would say it to me. Probably would make a plug for that. And did you use a lot of the kind of questions? Were you revising a lot when you were doing it, like as you went through? Was it kind of do a section, do some questions, or did you, just kind of work through the sections?
So once I'd read the actual PDF, jump onto the learning ecosystem, which is the Institute's like online portal that has all the content in it, and it's just a copy and paste of the actual text. And I find that at the end of each sort of paragraph block of content, they've got the relevant questions there as well. So you can just click do the practice questions, and it will test you on what you've just read in the last sort of 5-6 pages. Which I think is like makes it a whole lot easier than having to flick to the back of the section or the back of the topic, back of the reading, and go question by question down. But as I was reading through the first time, didn't touch a single question because once again it wasn't learning the stuff that first time through. Second time did a couple here and there, and then third time really went for it. And then once I sort of studied the text, I did do a full run through of all the questions, all 2,000 and something I think they were.
Yep.
I
think I think you have to do it, right? I think that's just hands down in my mind, that's the easiest way of setting yourself up well, right? Is go to the learning ecosystem, do the practice questions, be honest with yourself about, did you actually know that answer? Do it 3 times, right? It's kind of do it without your notes, do it with your notes, then look at the answer and figure out whether you've got it right or wrong, sort of
for sure.
strategy.
No, I definitely agree. And there's really no point. I mean, everyone in this sort of meeting probably knows from level 1, there's no point lying to yourself about the questions. You get something wrong, you can very easily go back and change that and then get the answer right. And you can, I believe it's one of the biases they actually teach you is that, once you see the answer, you're like, oh, I should have got that. That was an easy question. And that's just, it's just not going to do any favors for yourself. You're just lying to yourself with the scores there. So definitely more advantageous for you to run through, and if you get everything wrong, then you get everything wrong. It's going to tell you, it tells you you're going to have to go through it again.
Yeah, I think one of the most satisfying moments in my actual exam day was being able to look at the answers, get 4 multi-choice answers and be able to go through and go, that's like, that's a trap. That's not the right answer. And I know why that's not the right answer. This is the right answer because you've got to do this little bit extra, or this, precondition that you need to remember. And that's exactly what the practice questions are like as well, right? You go, yes, that's the answer, and then you get slapped in the face again because you forgot that thing you should have remembered.
Yeah, and doing the practice questions really teaches you that, and you're not gonna realize that you missed out on a final step of evaluation, or sort of a forecast if you haven't done the question and got the answer wrong. So I'd hands down have to say that doing practice questions was probably what brought me across the line. And to add to that as well and go further, I'd say the last month is probably the most important time. It's where you'll learn the most if you make that last month solely practice questions and review of the areas that you didn't score so well on. That last sort of 30 days is going to be, probably what brings you through. I'd say it's what brought me through.
Yeah, how did you kind of manage that with work? Did you have some time off before you sat your exam? What did that last month really look like?
Yeah, so very fortunately got 3 study days on work. So they gave those to me, and I took an extra few just to round out a whole week. As I mentioned before, I did fall ill, so that was a really large hit to the confidence, and hit to the anxiety. But I think I was able to sort of claw that back with the week off I had prior to the exam, and of course the exam day. So yeah, the last 6 days plus the exam day to make 7, I had off, and that was just dedicated solely to like 7 a.m. to 9 p.m. study, which probably isn't the healthiest way to do it, but it worked for me. So, and it's not going to work for some people, of course, but I found it to be good. Yeah.
Yeah, and did you kind of 7 till 9 is a long time.
Yeah.
Like, was it all of it sitting at the desk? Would you do it differently? Worked for you?
So I use this app on the computer that it's called Pomo Focus. You can sort of break your work down into timed sections. So I do like a 50-minute timer. So I'd start the 50-minute timer and then study hard for the 50 minutes. And then it dings, you go off for 10 minutes and you start back at the round of the hour. And I do that for maybe 3 or 4 sessions, go have a longer break, maybe an hour or 2 break, and then back to it. But yeah, apart from those sort of small intermittent breaks, it was at the desk for the full time. Yeah.
That's pretty full on.
Yeah.
To anyone sitting there going, that's pretty daunting, I might make you feel a little bit better. I don't know. My experience is probably pretty similar. I took 6 days of leave on work, bless them, and then a day for the exam. And I came into the office every day, partly because I knew that if I studied at home, I would never feel relaxed about the exam. Like, actually, part of learning is giving your brain the opportunity to kind of sift through the information that you've been given, and to actually get it from being, it's kind of like scratching an itch, right? Eventually, if you keep scratching your itch, you're going to draw blood. If you stop at some point, you kind of let it heal. That's kind of the way I feel about my brain as well. Like, you've got to get all this information in, and then you've got to stop and give it some time to kind of relax and, sift through it and figure out what it's going to retain and what it's not going to retain. So I guess, to my mind, like, my suggestion would be, by all means, do the 7 till 9 thing. If it works for you, if that's your thing, do it. My thing was come in, get to work at 9 o'clock, treat it like a work day. I was gone by 5. I made sure that, I went to the gym in the evening, swim, whatever it is, do some exercise to kind of relax. And actually have like that time to yourself, if you can, to, give your brain that opportunity to find a different outlet, think about something else. But at the same time, your brain will keep coming back to, what was that formula I need to remember? What was that little caveat that, I read about, or that little thing, right?
Yep. No, I certainly agree with that, and that's why I say, it's certainly not going to work for everyone. But I think for me and my personality, that worked really well. Another sort of time management tip for me, much like with you, Thomas, and going into the office, is weekends were in the office. So that sort of split up that home fatigue. Sitting in the same spot for the whole time isn't ideal. For day after day, it's not great. So go into the office, no one's around on the weekends, which is fantastic. You sort of get the office and the kitchen to yourself. You can really sort of make a full day of it if you want, or go on for a few hours. But that works for me really well, I felt.
Totally echo that. Office on the weekend was awesome. It's quiet. You've already your brain already knows that the office is the place to do work, right? You've already set up that pattern, that routine. You're not trying to sit in your bedroom and force yourself to work when you actually just want to lie on your bed and not do that. And those feelings definitely come around during CFA, right?
Oh yeah, you definitely feel like you want to have a day off, or have half a day off, and there's nothing wrong with that if you can spare the time. But I think that was also one of the keys to starting around, for my May exam, starting around this time of the year, was I did have the opportunity to take the odd day here and there. Obviously, a week off for being sick is far less than ideal, but in the lead up to that, I didn't necessarily feel guilty if, I went out with some mates on a Friday night and had a lazy Saturday morning kind of thing, maybe got on to an hour or two of study in the evening, and then maybe took the Sunday off. Give yourself enough time so that you can still do that, because it is really fatiguing just going 6 months, full. It's really tough to do.
And it sounds like, you were quite honest with yourself as well, right? Like, I imagine that, don't let me put words in here, but and from my experience, I go out on a Friday night, do social things. Friday was always my day that, Friday evening, it's my time, I'll do that. But if I hadn't done the work during the week, you get that sense of guilt, right? And you have to kind of just be a little bit quite honest with yourself about that.
For sure, yeah. You have to, keep yourself accountable as well. And if you do miss a study day and you weren't meant to, sort of tell yourself off, right? Say that's not good. Let's not do that again. And you do need to be very honest with yourself and not just sort of take the easy way and take a couple of days more than you should, for sure.
And did you have a bit of a plan in terms of, especially sort of those last couple of months as you're revising, getting like closer to exam day? Did you kind of write down what you were going to do, what topics you were going to focus on, when you were going to focus on them, or was it a bit more of a free for all? How'd that go?
So I think, thinking probably 3 months out from the exam, I pulled up an Excel spreadsheet and wrote down, had every date from then until the exam day, and sort of had three columns where I could type in the learning module numbers. I think they're called learning modules now. So from 1 to 40, whatever I think it was, maybe 50, I can't, or maybe even 30s, I can't remember, but 1 to whatever that was, and highlighted sort of green, orange, or red how I felt about that specific learning module. And then shifted them around on the calendar column, based on when I wanted to study that, on what day that I wanted to focus on that specific learning module, or for which sort of set of 2 or 3 days, based on how I felt about that topic. So based on that red, amber, green scale. And I think that was quite useful to visualize where my really weak areas were and where my strong areas were. And for example, the corporate issuers topic, I don't think I touched that until the last week, because it is all pretty straightforward. It's all fairly straightforward stuff, for me personally. So that was on a green, and that was, not till 3 days up from the exam. I didn't need to review that. But something like, for me, the economics readings, I even repeated those. So I'd study them maybe once every 3 weeks, just to make sure I really had that information down. So within that last 3 months, that was sort of the approach there. And then when I got to the last 40, 30 days, that's when I started my mock exams. And I used the mock exams to figure out what topic areas were rubbish effectively. And that once again informed how I felt about the topic area, and therefore informed how much time I put into that in the last 30 days.
Yeah, totally relate. To my mind, did a week of, I only had a month of revision, right, and did my first week. Right, I'm going to have a crack at this. These are the things I know I'm not good at. Mine is accounting. Financial statement analysis is not my thing. I hope I never have to look at pension funds again. But did a week of that, did the sort of mock exam on a day, and it gives you quite an unbiased, honest assessment of where you're at, right? Like, I knew accounting was going to be bad. Econ, surprisingly for me, was actually pretty dreadful, and was like, oh, maybe I was, a little bit overconfident in that area and hadn't done enough work in it, that sort of thing.
Yeah, I think the mocks are great for that, right? And treat it like a real exam. So put aside the time, put aside the 4.5 hours for start to finish, and have that half-hour break in the middle, or as long as you need, sort of less than half hour in the middle, and treat it like an exam day. Don't look at your notes. Have your desk completely clear. Try not to talk. Try not to have anyone in the room, and really treat it like it would be on the day, because that's going to give you the most objective result, and it's gonna really show you where you're at, and sort of inform the pace that you need to take those last few weeks at. Couldn't recommend
And
mocks highly enough.
yeah, totally agree. What was the sort of reaction after doing the mocks? How did you
I was,
feel?
I was all right on the first one. I got 75 on the first one, and I don't know whether that was good or bad for my sort of last few weeks, because that made me sort of a little bit comfortable. Which, as I say, could have been good or bad, but I made sure to not just stop at the first one. Keep doing. I think CFA gives you 2. I think you can get more if you got specific prep providers provide you more. I didn't do any of those, so I only did the CFA Institute's ones. But space it out, so don't just do both mocks in one day, because it's gonna, don't just look at maybe if you get like a 50, nothing wrong with that if you're far enough out to sort of remediate the underlying issues with that. But don't get a 50 and then go and sit the next one expecting to get a different mark, because there probably are some gaps in your knowledge which has led to that grade. So take a couple of weeks, study up on the areas that sort of dropped your score, and then give the second one a crack.
Yeah, I think the other thing I'd probably say is, my experience was my first mock exam was really good. My second mock exam was atrocious. And then my third mock exam I did the day before the exam was actually the worst mock exam I did. So I did 4 in total, and I was constantly going, shit, I'm getting worse, I'm getting worse, I'm getting worse. And definitely on the last day was really hard pill to swallow. Mark Meldrum's telling me I got, sub 60%. What am I going to do? I'm an idiot. All of that stuff. And you do have to, it is an unbiased assessment. It's a really good learning tool. I think I found the exam on the day actually a lot easier. I found like the mock exams were the more difficult, or the more technically complex, or the more niche questions you were going to get. And then on the day, I was like, is that it? Was that kind of your experience as well?
Yeah, no, I wholeheartedly agree with that. I know, especially with Mark Meldrum's exams, I've heard that they're pretty rough, compared to CFAI's ones. But the 2 from the CFA Institute they weren't atrocious, they weren't massively difficult, but they still did, as you say, dig into those niche areas. Maybe they'll refer to equity, the 3rd learning module within equity on page 74. Is where we taught you this formula, and if you don't know it, then you've just failed the mock. But that's not what the exam is necessarily going to be like at all. I think the same can probably be said for level 1 as well. I think I found the same with that. So for me, it was a consistent exam experience, except for the fact that, of course, it's a different question layout, different question style, but the actual learning ecosystem or curriculum difficulty of questions versus the exam day difficulty of questions, pretty much the same across both levels for me. And yeah, I did find that the curriculum questions were a little bit more difficult, but don't rely on that. Just saying.
Yeah, no, definitely. Had the. I think the other comment I'd probably make about the mock exams is that you might end up, just by luck of the draw, getting in the mock exams all the questions that of the topics you've already studied for. And as long as you're aware of that, part of the reason my first mock exam was really good, it was because I got all of the sections I'd seen done that week. That was already locked down. And then the second mock exam, I got the ones that I knew I was weaker on. And I kind of feel like on the day, you probably get more of a big mixed bag than the 2 mock exams would give you. The first mock exam, or second mock exam in my case, was the pension plan stuff. I hated the pension plan stuff. Not my section at all. But it was such a major part of that mock exam. And then in the actual exam, it's 2 or 3 questions it wasn't those really technically high level questions that you were getting. Definitely gave me a bit more confidence.
Yeah, and it's I guess unfortunately down to a little bit of luck on exam day based on what version of the exam you get. For example, I had a whole heap of economics of growth questions that I sort of knew. I kind of knew the content, but it was a little bit of a mission for me. Economics has always been, as I've sort of said earlier, but I had a lot of questions like that on the exam. And I basically, I can't remember having many of sort of the easier topics for me. Equity, I know a lot of people find easier. There was forward valuations. There wasn't a whole lot of questions for me, and that was another strong area. So it really comes down to luck based on what you get on the exam day. So another sort of caveat with using your mocks to inform your last few weeks of study is that you might have got a mock that has a very particular set of questions in it that is not representative of your knowledge. And on another day, and that's the reason why they provide you insights on your results based on another day and another exam, you would have scored within this range.
Hey, I might just, conscious of time, might turn it over to questions. Guys, feel free to throw them in the chat or Q&A option. And I guess the question for you guys is kind of, how you guys feeling in response to what we've kind of talked about. Is most of this in line with where you're kind of thinking you're at? Anything that's really stood out to you that you might want to reiterate or say, hey, that's something I've thought about, or something that sounds like a good idea. I just want to bring other people's attention to it. Yeah, feel free to jump on and give us some feedback.
I'll jump in, fellas.
Yeah, please.
First, it's pretty refreshing, to hear you guys actually talk through the good parts and the shit parts as well. Because it can be pretty punishing coming into the office on a Sunday afternoon. But I guess I'd be keen to get your thoughts. You kind of touched on it a bit with your study prep and the mocks, but were there any sort of resources or parts that you were like, man, I'm glad I stumbled across that? You see a lot of like everyone talking about the blue box questions and all that sort of stuff, but what's your guys' equivalent?
Mitch, you want to jump on that one?
Yeah, I can jump on that one. I didn't actually touch the blue box questions. I had every intention on doing it. I just ran out of time. And that didn't adversely impact my grade too much. I still passed. If I'd have done them, would I have scored better? Potentially, most likely. But I didn't feel like that killed me on the exam day, not having touched on those. In terms of non-curriculum focused things, a resource that I couldn't have gone without was a study planner from a website called 300 Hours. They've got a free study planner template. It sort of plans out your days, shows you how many days you've got to the exam, how many days you've got for certain readings to make up. And I sort of I had that open every time I sat down with the books or with the learning ecosystem. And that was really invaluable to sort of planning out my timeline, making sure I had enough time for each learning module, as well as revision in the end as well. But going through the text, I so you've also got to keep in mind, and this is, I guess, the key change from level 1. You've also got to keep in mind the style that they're going to ask you questions in. So they're not going to give you a question in isolation from the others. So they're going to give you a vignette or a case study, and you got to read through that and answer questions based on the content from that. And keeping that in mind throughout your study is really valuable because it gives you a little bit of an insight into what parts of the text they might test you on. And I guess, using equity valuation as an example, you can sort of see as you're going through the text that they might give you a company to value, and then they'll ask you for different valuation methods to get to the intrinsic value of the stock. And you can sort of foresee that as a question because you know that they're trying to teach you, they're trying to get across here that there are different methods to doing this task, to evaluate the stock. And so keeping that sort of format of the questions in mind, I found really helpful going through the content.
Yeah,
What about you,
totally
George?
agree with the case study stuff.
Mm.
Yeah, having those 4 questions. I think my other kind of more general tip, the thing that I found really helpful, having gone through the Mark Meldrum kind of process, all the videos, that sort of thing, was before I was kind of in that full study, review, revise, get it all in there kind of cram level, just having the 20-minute kind of review video, I'd sort of watch it on the bus in my way into work, and maybe I'd come into work and start doing questions. So let's take, equity is a really good one. I'd start doing all the price ratios, all the price earnings multiples, all that sort of stuff. Give me that 15-minute review, because actually I haven't seen that stuff for 6 months now with my approach. Then just starting to do the easier questions, and starting to build on having heard it again and had, framing my thinking around it, and then sort of building up into that more difficult stuff. And the other thing that I find really, really useful is I just got a couple of pieces of paper for every single different section of the course, equity, ethics, corporate issuers. And every time there was something, I just, something really minor, something major, a formula, whatever it was, just writing it onto that piece of paper. And every time, just before you go to bed, the week before my exam, as I was going to bed, just looking through those, seeing those things again, because they're things you've already forgotten once, you'll forget them again. And by the end of it, it just helps with, what was the formula for the F stat? Oh yeah, that's right, it was this over this. What was the R squared formula? Because there is just too much otherwise. And I found that, conditional value at risk, what's the formula? I know it's on this page, I can see it. And your brain, especially in the morning, starts putting things from short-term memory into long-term memory. So if you're seeing it the first time, as you go to bed, you're looking at it, you're remembering those things, you form that pattern. When you wake up, you see those things again. That's when it goes from short-term memory, all sort of going to be forgotten, into a bit more of a long-term memory, and you can actually draw on it a little bit later.
Yeah, to add to that, I know probably most of you would have stumbled across it, at some point in your academic sort of life, but learning how to learn as well, if you haven't touched on that since university or even since high school, I think it's really valuable. Learn how the brain sort of processes information. Like you say, Thomas, learn that in the morning you are going to be in your most efficient state to putting things into the long-term memory. So maybe doing some of the more difficult stuff in the morning is going to help out. Just learn some tips around actually learning rather than CFA as well.
Yep, totally right. You have to, I think that's the biggest thing about CFA, right, is that it's past there's more content than you've ever had at university. It's at a technical level that's generally a bit higher than where you are at university. So you actually already need to be a pretty competent learner and understand what works for you to be able to actually, eat enough of it, chew it down, get through it.
Yeah,
for sure.
and don't just take what it says in the text as the final word on the topic. There's so many academic sources out there. Only do this if you've got the time, of course, but question certain things. So they might say in the text, this pricing model is the best. Go through and ask why, and do a little bit of research and sort of look at some more details around that. And we're sort of escaping the details of the curriculum there a little bit. So as I say, only do this if you do have the time. But knowing how to think critically about a concept, I found to be quite valuable as well. And going through and researching that further outside of the text is quite helpful.
Yeah, I mean, like, I coloured in sort of my whole CFA level 2 was coloured in with the ongoing case study of what would contact energy do. Doing dividend payouts, I would go and look at, well, what did context dividend payout ratio look like? What was our earnings growth? If I actually saw things in terms of the business I was currently working for, that coloured all of these things in just a little bit more than just that's the formula I need to remember. Oh, well, I remember that context dividend payout ratio was about this, and I know our share price is about this, so therefore I can figure out, just having that, that context for me also made it a bit easier to show up to work when I'm tired and I've done heaps of CFA study. I've got a little bit more context on sort of how we would do things. And it doesn't work for everything. It may not work if you're not working at a finance or a private sector job, but I'm sure, Mitch, you probably did the same, with FMA.
Yeah, absolutely. Another thing I did was actually ran up a few, and this helped for equity, ran up a few equity valuations as well. So got a few DCF models, free cash flow to the firm, and equity is a big concept within the equity topic. So I did one up at the same time and sort of followed the numbers through. I think they also give you some resources as well in the text that you can follow along with as well. Take advantage of that, right? It's part of the curriculum. You might not be tested on stuff that's not in the book, but it will help you understand what's in the book more, applying it to a real world example.
Yep, for sure. Any other questions, guys? It's a really good one. Well, hope they helped. Tam, I see you've just come off mute, so jump in.
Yeah, I have a question, which is probably quite niche. So I'm not a native speaker. So what I'm most afraid about case study kind of question is English level, because sometimes when I do answer question about ethics, because they have like long paragraph explaining who is doing what, I sometimes need to look up dictionary or some words. So I'm just wondering if a case study in level 2 is going to be like real difficult in terms of like literally level skill.
My answer would be no, without giving you a horrible false sense of security. I would say that it's 2 or 3 sentences to kind of get you set up. And the other thing that I would be trying to focus on the most is just getting the numbers out when you're reading through those case studies. If you see, and I've forgotten all of it now, but if you start to see sort of, especially in the equity section, like an EBITDA formula or an enterprise value formula, or some variables that might build into that formula, that's going to help you sort of untangle what you need to know. That would probably be my biggest piece of advice.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, all the questions are in pretty plain English as well, and they do that to avoid issues with non-native English speakers. The ethics still might be a little bit tough. I mean, I found it very hard to interpret certain things, and I don't want to put you off in that way, but I think inherently ethics is tough to decode those questions. So I guess everyone can expect that, but I don't think they're not out to confuse people with the way they ask their questions and the way they structure them. They do make it very clear what they're asking. They're not just going to, send you down the garden path by saying, here's some variables, come up with a valuation. It's not going to be quite that open. They will ask exactly what they want from you, and they'll explain exactly what you need to have within the question to answer it.
Oh, that's awesome. Thank you.
All good. Hey, any other questions? I know we're getting close to 8 o'clock, but happy to stay on and answer any others that might come up.
Yeah, you guys kind of touched on it a bit, but would there be any like advice you have in terms of adjusting? Like for me, for example, I feel like the way I studied for level 1 worked quite well. What would you say are like some key differences you might have made between your level 1 and level 2 study kind of technique and regime and things?
I'd say the biggest thing that sort of comes to mind is know how to evaluate the advantages and disadvantages of a certain approach to something. So I guess, we've used we've used equity quite a bit, but they will give you quite a few valuation methods, and know which ones you need to use in which situations. So know, do you use free cash flow to the firm, or do you use free cash flow to equity? All depends on the sort of the capital structure of the company, and learn that, and don't just memorize the formula, because you probably get away with that in level 1, because they're going to ask you to use the formula to value to find the intrinsic value of the stock. But now you need to know which valuation method should I choose based on what they've provided me. That's one of the biggest ones for me that I found personally is know how to evaluate the advantages and disadvantages of certain approaches. And that's consistent for all of the pricing topics, derivatives, fixed income, alt investments as well. There's some in there too. And then when you get into the portfolio management, I guess the approach changes a little bit because it becomes a little bit more advanced in the sense that you're starting to sort of evaluate risk. You're starting to look at pricing on markets and how that sort of stuff works. So definitely know how to evaluate the advantages and disadvantages.
So you'd say just like understanding things in a more contextual way is probably the biggest difference. Yeah, that makes sense.
That's a good way to put it. Yeah, actually understand the content rather than just memorize the formula.
Yeah, it's such a hard thing to have to say to someone, right? Like the reality is that level 2 is a step up, and it's a step up because you can't do the memory thing. You're not going to get asked for a definition of something.
Did he drop off for everyone?
Yeah.
I guess I could probably continue his sentence. I think I know where it was going. Yeah, you're not going to get asked for definitions. You're not going to get. Oh, there he is. I'll let you continue.
No, basically, yeah, just learn the stuff. Don't just rote learn the stuff. Don't try and remember it. The other thing is, like, I probably didn't change my approach very much from level 1 to level 2. Like, I was pretty set in kind of, I was going to have 8 months of learning the content, writing the notes down, doing some multi-choice questions at the end of a chapter, thinking about this sort of in sort of 20 to 30% of my free time. And then the last 6 weeks was just going to be a slog, and I was just going to, get it done and put it away. It worked for me at level 1. I was pretty happy, pretty comfortable with how that worked, and paid off in level 2 as well. So yeah, if it works, I think carry on with it. Cool. Any other questions? Feel free to jump in.
No, that was really helpful.
Awesome. Hey, sweet as guys. Yeah, look, feel free to flick us a message. I'm sure you can either track me down, me and Mitch down on LinkedIn or something else. If you guys have further questions that crop up, all the rest of it. Best of luck for your exams and the grind ahead. If you're getting stuck into it, it'll be worth it in the end, I'm sure.